Hi, so this is the second lesson of Speak Cree with me, and today we're actually going to be looking at nouns. If you haven't been to the blog, if you go there now, lesson 2 actually has a PDF that you can look at of the syllabic chart, and also I provided a PDF of a worksheet that you can also download or print or whatever you want to do with it, just so you can start practicing and feeling like you're engaging with the lessons more instead of just reading and watching. I find actually interacting with languages when you're learning them helps to really cement them. So if you want to go check that out, that's just on the second blog post for this blog. So the thing with nouns within the Cree language is they're divided into two categories of animate and inanimate. And so we're going to look at some of those nouns, and then we're also going to look at why that's important, why there's two different ones. So we'll look at first the animate nouns. So some obvious examples of nouns that would be animate are man, napwi, and woman with isgowi. And remember that G sound is actually a K, so when you're thinking about it in spelling, that K is has a G sound. So we have man, napui, and we have woman, isgowi. Man, napui, woman, isgowi. So an example of something that would be considered inanimate would be hair, which is mastagaya, and bone, which is osgan. So those are two things that I think can agree, most people would consider as being inanimate. The thing though is that with the inanimate animate structure is a grammatical and semantic feature that expresses how sentient or alive something is. So when we look at it from that perspective, there's going to be expectations of what we think are going to be considered animate and things that we think are going to be inanimate. But within the Cree language system, not everything you think is going to be considered inanimate is, and vice versa. So we'll look at some of those right now. So then you have something like rock, which I would consider inanimate, and a lot of other people would consider inanimate, and it falls under the category of animacy. And so rock, asania, is considered animate. However, your hand, which is machisi, is considered inanimate. So you as a whole are considered animate, but then your individual body parts are considered inanimate, which is actually sort of, I mentioned earlier, is how your hair and bone are considered inanimate, as well as your hands, your feet, your arms are all considered inanimate. And then there's things that are considered mass nouns. So much like in English how sheep is just sheep, we don't pluralize that. Things like water are considered mass nouns, and those are considered neutral. So water, nipi, is neutral. And that's important because there's different ways to pluralize the different animate and inanimate nouns. So then you have things like, so for example, rock, when it's plural, because it's animate, the pluralization will end with a-k. So Oceania becomes Oceaniac. Whereas canoe, because it's considered inanimate, is just going to end with a. And so canoe, sismang, becomes tismana. And one more thing to keep in mind is with places, the way that the nouns work with places is that, so you have the place name like mosomin. Then if you want to indicate that you are, if it's a rock, you want to indicate you're on the rock, or if it's at a place and you want to indicate that you're at the place, then it ends with an IHK. And remember, the K is always a G sound. So mosomin becomes mosoming, and that would imply that you were there or they were there, depending on how it was used in a sentence. So I've also decided to break this up into multiple parts because there's actually quite a bit of extensive rules around how the nouns function within the Cree language. So this is just part one of nouns. And so as I mentioned, you can actually go to the blog and you can actually do a worksheet, and in the worksheet it'll have sounds to practice, like the K sound, the C sound, which is a ts sound, and then it'll also have a couple of words that you can look at and try to sound them out. I left a space on the page so that you can try and sound out the sounds yourself and get used to kind of hearing those sounds and figuring out phonetically how they're supposed to look. Oh, and the other thing too is, while this isn't, this video is a lot shorter than the actual blog post, when you go to the blog post, there's actually going to be more lists of words, and next to them I have is like quite a few phonetic pronunciations of them, plus the syllabic spelling of them. So you'll have the syllabic chart, the worksheet, plus the blog post will also include quite a bit of like extra information and words that you can learn and practice. I didn't include them all in this video because I wanted to try and keep it short and not draw it out and bore everybody to death. So yeah, that's the second lesson part one of Speak Cree with me. I hope you guys found it informative.